Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Wisconsin Investor. I am your host, Corey Reyment, and I am here today with my good buddy, Tristan Laporte, otherwise affectionately known as TLP. TLP,
Yes.
what's up today, baby?
I'm great, man. How are you doing, Corey?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good.
Good.
Tristan and I just got back from doing a little missions trip in Mexico. We built a
hmm
house down there for a family in a day and a half. So, Tristan, that was your first experience putting those rough ball hands together and doing something for somebody else without a expectation of a return. What was your experience like on this mission trip?
It was a phenomenal one. I really enjoyed it. There was times where I was, building the roof and talking to Maycool down there. I was like, I might come down here for a year at some point and just do it full time. Because I was talking with him and he's like, I'm not worried about the money. I just do it for fun on the side for weekends. And he builds like 50 to 70 homes for people
Wow.
a year. And I thought that was an amazing thing. It was very fulfilling
Yeah, for sure.
thing to do, to watch them, especially go from scrap metal tin roof house
Yeah,
to four walls of roof and a locking front door.
yeah,
Things that we take for granted every day.
for
It
sure.
really puts things in perspective, I think. I know that sounds cliche, but
It really
for a
does. Yeah.
reason.
And what Tristan and I are talking about, there's an organization called YWAM Youth with a Mission, and they have a program called Homes for Hope. And so they go around and they select through an extensive process deserving families in Mexico and all around the world, actually, who are living in poverty conditions and just need a safe, secure house and that sort of thing. And so we took a group of 25 of us down there, built this house in a day and a half, and as Tristan said, it allows us to think about when we're sitting here talking about how our assets are doing and how much our wealth is building and all this other kind of cool stuff, which is fun. It's great, but it's really humbling to go down there and just our problems are things they haven't even had time to think about yet,
Oh yeah.
in their life. So let's get into talking about some wealth building and
Yeah,
some other fun money stuff and away from the mission
please.
stuff. Talk to me a little bit, Tristan. How did you get into real estate? I know the story, but
Mhm.
I want the audience to hear a little bit from you. Like, how did you get into this fun world of real estate investing?
Yeah. So I straight out of college, I got a sales job selling dental supplies to dental offices. So 2019, I was like cold calling around and trying to earn people's business. Nose to the grindstone, earning dentists business to sell them like uh, floss and toothbrushes and stuff like this. Stuff that
Very
I'm
exciting things.
super excited about, right? I
Very
love doing that.
exciting things. Yeah.
And it just got to a point where I needed to find a different route because this waking up at 8 a.m., going to work for 8 hours and coming back, it was draining, and I think a lot of people feel that same way.
Yeah.
And I just needed to find a way. So I bought my first duplex on the MLS in 2019, I think.
Okay.
So I was working there for about a year or so. And on paper, I house hacked it. So
Okay.
I rented out the one side, and then the other side actually sat vacant for a little bit because I was still living with a roommate at the time,
Okay.
on the lease. Looking back, I probably could have rented it out, but it's
Yeah.
hindsight's 2020.
Right.
Um, so I did that for a little bit, and then after that, I moved out of my apartment and moved into a single family. That, funny enough, it was the time I was applying for a position at your company,
Yep.
and I ended up buying it from one of your previous employees, um, Zach, and
Yep.
then so I moved in that lived in for that for a little bit, and then turned that into a rental, and then I bought this house through you, remodeled it, and that was my first experience with a contractor, which was a massive learning experience. And then, and then from there, it snowballed into 12 units and a couple of flips under my belt, and where we're at today. And
I
yeah, I
love it,
don't,
man.
and yeah, and I went to go out on my own about just over a year ago. So
Yeah. Yeah. You're a little over a year and a half out now, or not quite a year and a half, but a little
we're getting there.
somewhere close to that. Yeah. So, well, one of the reasons, Tristan, I thought this would be interesting for our audience to listen to is, we have several people we know that are in this industry, and a lot of these people as well. They're
Mhm.
building massive portfolios that are super impressive, and we've got other guys that are flipping 50, 60 properties a year, and I
Yeah.
mean, good, they're killing it, right? What I thought was really interesting is you worked for us for like, what 3 years was it?
Something like that,
Well,
yeah.
3 years, and then you had your dental
Ish.
city thing or your company before that that you worked for
Hmm.
however many years, and you built a little respectable little portfolio on the side while you
Hmm.
were working for us and previously, and then you went out on your own. And what I think is really cool is like I in some ways envy what you're doing because you you're not trying to, at least from what I can see, it
Yeah.
doesn't look like you're trying to build this massive company here. It looks
Mhm.
like you're basically, trying to build a nice lifestyle for yourself. And I think there's like you're a little bit of a different avatar than some that I
Yeah.
interview, in the sense that you're looking at things a little differently. So what's your perspective on, where you're at today in the business and where you're headed?
Yeah. And that's definitely changed since I started. Because it started my whole it started I remember being on the Zoom call with Tony and
Mm-hmm.
being like, he's like, well, what's your goals? What do you want to do? And I told Tony, I'm like, I need 10 grand in cash flow a month or 100 doors, whichever comes first. And now I know those are completely different
Yeah.
levels. um, but that was my goal starting off.
Yeah.
And it it and then finally it got to a point with when I was working on that 6 unit where it was like I'm spending more. I'm putting I'm it's so much more fulfilling to work on my own stuff for me
Yeah.
than it is, and no offense to you, Corey, but it's so much
That's all right.
more to do that for me than to go in and work, you know, 40 hours a week for building somebody else's
Mhm.
lifestyle. And then on top of that, come home and not have the energy or the time or whatever excuse I'm going to make to uh, put into my own life, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so it started off as that, and then it molded. And then as soon as I left, I had this massive fire, and I'm like, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go. And then and then now it's really transitioned into, you know, I have I have this freedom of I can have the slow mornings if I want.
Mhm.
I really value that. And
Yeah.
it got to a point where, you know, as long as I can provide for the ones that I love
Yep.
and do jujitsu and
Yes.
and do that, I'm good. Like
Yeah.
that's really my perspective on that, and because I really value the like presence with
Uh-huh.
myself and the people that I'm around.
Yeah.
And I looking back, I noticed that I it was difficult for me to be present um doing that like
Trying
working
to
that
do
job.
too much. You were trying to do
Yeah,
too
trying to
much.
do too much. Yeah,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
For sure. 100%. I can totally relate because now that our business is, I think we have 15 employees at the current time that we're recording this.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pressure on doing that. Like we have to do a
Yeah.
certain amount of volume in revenue every single year to cover all of the expenses and the overhead.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of pressure for me as the owner to realize like, hey, I have families who are depending on this company now
Yeah.
to provide for their families, right? And so it's
Hmm.
like this constant, like we have to keep going and we have to grow and we have to do all these things in order to,
Hmm.
to provide those folks the lifestyle that they want to be able to live within the structure of our company, right?
Right.
Um, what I love about you is like, you're a single guy, no kids that you're aware of, at least I think, right?
Yeah, no
And
kids, no kids.
no, nobody's creeped on you on Facebook saying, "Hey, Dad," nothing
No,
like
not
nothing
yet.
like that
Not
yet.
yet.
Uh, this thing's going out the rails quick. Anyway, uh, but I think what's cool about that is like you're wise ahead of time, because that, like, now that I have kids too and all that stuff, now I have to provide for them and I have to
Yeah.
grow we have a certain lifestyle that we've gone to, like we've grown into this much bigger lifestyle than we had before, and now we have to sustain that, and so there's a lot more pressure on us. And I think you at a young age here are realizing like time and peace of mind to you is more important than building some massive company, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, that's super cool. What are some of the things? So when you left and went out on your own, what are some of the mistakes you made, Tristan, or things that you wish you would have maybe planned for ahead of time that now, knowing what you know now, what you would have done differently?
Um, that's a great question. Looking back, I think I think I would have done a better job accounting and
Okay.
like keeping track of numbers. Yeah, I started off really strong and like
Okay.
everything went into an Excel spreadsheet, and you know, I had money for taxes and all that stuff. And then as time went on, I got lackadaisical, as my dad would call it. And
Yeah.
I kind of got away from that. So that
Yeah.
would be one of the things that um honestly, there's a lot of things I don't know if I would have done anything different because I feel like I needed to mess up. Like I needed to do those things to learn um to learn that it's going to be okay. It was that I think one of the things that another thing that I could have done maybe a little bit better is where I could have moved faster is if I was more comfortable moving forward with the presence of uncertainty,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Explain that a little
Um,
bit. Explain that a little bit more.
yeah, so like one of the first projects I had was flipping that house in Brilliant,
Okay.
and it was my first experience like doing a full flip because we down to the studs we put 60 grand into it
Okay.
and but I personally have a tendency to when things get complicated or messy or I'm uncertain about some things I tend to procrastinate a little bit.
Uh-huh.
So one of the things that I would have done I guess better or different is just keep moving forward and like, figure things out and not let those small mountains stop me,
Yeah,
if that makes
for
sense.
sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Totally. Go back to the accounting thing that you talked about because I think this is really
Yeah.
important for people, the audience that's out there listening. If you're working at W2 right now and you're like, man, I would love to be in Tristan's shoes and just have my coffee in the morning and just chill. And then, when I get there kind of lifestyle.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's a really important piece. Like when we were looking to quit and go W2, that was something one of our mentors at the time told us was like, you make sure you have a bookkeeper. And we're like, a bookkeeper? We don't even have enough to bookkeep for.
I
And he's
can't
like,
pay,
but
but
you,
yeah.
yeah, but he's like, but you will. And so you need to hire that bookkeeper now for the person you're going to be in 6 months or a year. And I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh, that's like, okay, whatever you say, sir. I don't
It's a
believe
good
it, but
mindset.
okay. When you go back to the accounting thing, like now you're saying you got lackadaisical. Is it just like on running your numbers up front? Is it keeping track of expenses and income? Is it setting aside money for taxes? Can you expand a little bit more on?
It's a little bit of all of that.
Okay.
Because I had this and I don't know if I'm doing this the right way, but I had this business credit card that I was using and it got, I maxed it out on the thing. It got to a point where I wasn't able to like pull everything off.
Mm,
So I started to have to, instead of like putting the business expenses on the business credit card, I ended up having to put I'd like pull money off like a debit card and stuff. So it intermingled
oh, okay.
my business expenses and my personal expenses. And I know that's a bad thing. I know that's
Hmm.
not a good thing to do, but it
Yep,
was the reality of the situation, and
for
I
sure.
had to do that to move forward.
Hmm.
But that's what I mean by that.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. So it was just more like planning cash flow wise of like
More
how
like
you were going to
planning and
go.
understanding um, is do I need to use the line of credit with this, or do I use the credit card, or am I good to pay with this? It's more of like the chess game
Hmm.
as with all the money pieces and the tools is what I'm getting
I
at.
got you. Yeah. No, totally understand that. That's a big part of this. And I think what's kind of fun is as you go along in the game, you start to gain more chess pieces to play with, but also
Mhm.
it can complicate things if you're not keeping track of it.
Yeah,
Like
it can.
for sure. Like we have several lines of credit on a lot of our rentals, and I
Yeah.
have a spreadsheet that I keep track of like because we do private money lending now with some of we like
Mm,
arbitrage the lines of credit and we'll go hard money lend some of that out and then
yeah.
we purchase some properties for flips or whatever. So if I don't keep track of like where that money is, I'm like, oh man, where did I borrow that money from to pay for this? And like
Yeah.
it gets very messy and lost. And we have bookkeepers, and
Still get lost.
I still get lost in like because
Yeah.
still have to tell them what to put in the books. So yeah,
Yeah.
that
So there's still a level of that you need to be accountable to yourself
100%.
with the bookkeeper. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things with the bookkeeper is that is frustrating is I wish they could just go in my brain and understand where I'm spending money. And I didn't have to tell them. I could just spend it. And
Yeah.
they'd be like, oh, yeah, Corey was spent it over here at this Home Depot or whatever. And this is what project it was for. Like,
Yeah. That
I'm sure there's a better system than what we're doing now, but it's
yeah.
working now.
There's always a better system.
Yeah,
There's always.
I've got it. I've had to just train myself over the years. Like anytime I spend money for the business, I send an email to my bookkeeper. And I'm like, this is what it's for. Blah, blah, blah. And
And
then
it's just automatic now, though, I bet.
yeah, and they ask if at the end of the month they'll go through the books, and if they see something that I didn't like I missed or whatever, they have like a little system that it's called Uncat. It's a website where they just put the transactions out that they have questions on. And then I go in there
Okay.
and just type like, this is what it was for, this is what property, blah, blah, blah. And then they reconcile it with the books.
Okay.
But yeah, bookkeeping's a big thing. What I want to go to your mindset when you were looking to leave and go out
Okay.
on your own. What was your process for that? Like, did you have any process? Was it like, hey, I'm going to make sure I have X amount saved up, or I have this type of project going on before I can go out on my own? Or was it just kind of like, I'm just going to go and figure it out?
This, yeah. And honestly, I don't think you've ever actually heard this story because you
No,
were a little away from everything
right. I was
when
pretty
this was all
removed from the
going on.
business when you left. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay. So what happened was I was I was in the middle of working on that 6 unit.
Okay.
We were remodeling it, right?
Okay. Can you tell the audience real quick? Because they don't know what 16, I know what 16 you're talking about.
Oh,
So
okay. So
tell
I
them.
purchased this 6 unit apartment complex downtown Green Bay. It's like a block, couple blocks north of one of the hospitals down there. So my plan with it was we're gonna turn all 6 units into midterm rentals. So when we submitted the documents for the construction loan application, they used the income off all 6 units
For the
to
base M.
determine the
Okay.
after repair value of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that shot my ARV way up, and I was able to get like a $200,000 rehab loan for it. So I think all in on this 6 unit, I'm like 598 at this time.
Okay.
Um, but the only remodels I have under my belt at this time is I did a flip on Farland and I put like 5 grand of exterior paint into it, and that was it. That was it. The
Before you
whole thing.
jumped into this two hundred
Before
thousand
I
dollar
jumped into
rehab.
this 6 unit. Yeah.
Oh man.
So it was like leap of faith. Here we go.
Yeah, I love
We're
that
doing
though.
it.
That's great. I mean, it'll
Um,
sink or swim, baby.
Sink or swim, right?
Yep.
I'm not gonna die. It's not gonna kill
No.
me.
No.
So, I do think I'm more risk tolerant than most people, though,
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
But anyways, so that's what that was. I was in the middle of working on that, and
And you were doing a lot of the work yourself?
yes and no.
Okay.
Uh, we were like some interior stuff, like building the cabinets and countertops and general like carpentry stuff. Yeah, I was doing it. I had some help with my dad,
Okay.
but like more artistic stuff like paint and other things like plumbing, and we had to replace a boiler, stuff like that. I'm obviously hiring out.
For sure.
Um, and that helped me get super uh more well versed in dealing with contractors.
Okay.
But anyways, I'm 5 days working on that. And then I took Saturday, I remember this so vividly. I took a Saturday and a
Yeah.
Sunday and I worked all day. I worked 8 hours for you, and then I went to the 6 unit and worked like 9 or 10 hours on the 6 unit on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
And then I remember walking into the office and sitting down at my desk and looking around and just being like, what am I doing here? Why am I here? And it was that day that I don't remember. Yeah, it was that day I put like a plan together. I put like a whole exit strategy together.
Okay.
Let me check real quick because I might still have it on my phone
That's
because this
awesome.
was like a this was a big thing in my head. I do. Yeah, so I went through and I organized my thoughts in my head as to what I needed to do to feel comfortable um leaving.
Okay.
And I'll just go down if that's
Sure. Yeah.
unless that's okay.
Yeah. No, that's great.
So one of the ones I put on there was like an accounting audit. Like I need to know where my money's at, what's coming in, what's going out, how I'm gonna do this.
Mm,
Um,
good.
so there was that. I needed like I needed to know what my break even number was. I needed to know what I need to make each month
Yep.
to stay afloat.
Yep. Your burn rate, we call it.
My burn rate, yep.
Yep.
I put down define infrastructure needed. So in my mind, this was going to be like a business, and we were gonna have a CRM, accounting, and stuff like that, and like
Yeah.
QuickBooks and everything.
Yeah.
I wanted to define my ideal day, week, month, year. I wanted to like fully plan out everything. I wanted to organize my CRM because we were using Podio at the time, and
Right.
I had my own little workshop in Podio of
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
I needed to clarify items with my dad. So my dad started off as like basically a 1099 employee or
Okay.
contractor
Okay.
with me. So I needed to clarify like, hey, are we doing this together or am I doing this with your business? Are we separate? Like, how are we doing that?
That's really good.
Needed to do that.
That's really good.
And then I wanted to come up with like rules to live by and like core values. And then there was like some exercise. I think it was either you or I talked to Zach about it, and it was like pick 20, pick 10, pick 5, and it was like go down to get your core values. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to have a really good understanding of what I wanted my life to look like
That's really good, dude.
post leaving, because that's the whole reason I'm doing this in the first place,
Right.
was to leave.
Yeah.
So I did
Uh,
that,
okay.
had that whole plan. I'm like, and I set my end date. I was like, I think this was around like July or August.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna leave next March. And so that gives me like 6 months. I can build a good base. I will leave on and the day I close on a flip. That'll be my last day. I'll close on it,
Okay.
and the next day I can get to work on
Yeah.
flipping, and we'll off
Yeah.
the races. Well, October comes around, and I end up, it was like, it's like all the puzzle pieces just like fell into place
Yeah.
because that triplex came available. Like the other company had it under contract and then didn't. So I was gonna buy it at this higher price. The contract got lost, and then somebody else got it under contract
Okay.
for a lower price and then tried wholesaling it. So I got it at the lower price, and I'm
Nice.
like, you know what? This is it. We're doing it. So
Hit the
instead of the
button.
one in March, I ended up doing the triplex in October,
Okay. Awesome, dude. Well,
and then that really,
yeah. Well, hopefully none of my employees listen to this episode, so I'm gonna tell them all just you don't want to listen to what TLP has to say anyway.
you won't
Just
publish this one.
yeah, we're not publishing this one. I'm gonna stay in the yeah, Tristan, it'll be out. Oh, I don't know what happened to it. Yeah, weird. Must have lost
Yeah, yeah,
weird. No, but I think what's really smart about what you're saying there for the audience that is in your shoes looking to exit wherever they're at, right? Is you put together some thought behind it
yeah.
before
I
just
did.
jumping off.
I didn't just jump. I
Right.
I thought about it a lot, but when after I had those thoughts to paper and I had a at least some framework of a plan,
Yeah.
that's when I jumped.
Yes.
I saw an opportunity, I took it, and we're here.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I think understanding the lifestyle you wanted to live too, as I'm sitting here unpacking everything you've been saying,
Mhm.
I think that to me seems like the key to what you did because that dictates how many properties you're buying, that
Yeah,
dictates how many flips you're doing at one time, that dictates like how much you're going to spend on it versus hiring things out. Like it dictates everything is this like kind of set of rules it sounds like that you created for yourself as far as like how you want to live because that's the most important thing it sounds like to me when you decide to go on your own. It was more for you about like the lifestyle of what you want your day to day to look like. And I
yeah,
think that's really smart. You're a
yeah,
relatively young guy and to be able to be, sort of awakened and aware at this age versus just
yeah,
being, unhappy every day, punching the clock. As much as I would have loved to keep you, uh,
yeah.
there's a shelf life to what you were doing
It's true.
and I think you putting the plan together was a really really smart thing, and I love that you incorporated like core values and stuff into it. I think for somebody that's going out on their own, that's not usually one of the things they're sitting thinking about is what are the core values, what's the lifestyle I want to look at. A lot of times, even
Yeah,
me when I'm coaching people, I'm like, well, how many units do you want? How much cash flow do you want?
yeah.
But that it's all numbers
Well, I
based.
wrote it down. It doesn't necessarily mean I did
Yeah, but I
it.
mean, you at least setting an intention. And I think to you, though, what it sounds like, Tristan, is most of yours was based around lifestyle and not necessarily like, yeah, I want 100 units and I want $10,000. Like, I think what I'm hearing is you put that down because you thought you had to, in
Yeah,
some sense, like something you've learned maybe from
yeah,
all of our conversations or other conversations, like you have to have a number goal and unit goal and all these kinds of things.
yeah.
And what really boiled down is for you, it's more so about the lifestyle. Like,
It was, and I think I don't think that detracts or takes away from the numbers thing, because I think
right.
that's super important. Like if you don't have an end goal or something to work towards,
Mm-hmm.
you're just kind of moving through this void of trying to figure things out.
Yep.
Like I had that end goal. I know where I wanted to go,
Mm-hmm.
and then I along the way I like readjusted the flight path as to, oh no, I guess we're gonna come over here a little bit,
For sure.
and did that.
And that's I think really important too for the audience. If you set a goal, you don't have to be so rigid if you get into it and something changes in your life. Like life happens all the time. People are always adjusting and changing, and you're off a little bit over in one direction. Okay, let's adjust and move this direction a little bit and pick a different destination. We're going the same hemisphere. We're just going to change the city we're landing in, right? A
Yeah,
little bit kind of a situation. So I think that's important for the audience to know. Like Carrie and I, in this business, we have changed so much. Like we go to, you know, this being a company, 1 minute we're like,
I'm well
1 minute we're
aware.
like, hey, we're doing this. And then like 3 months later, we're like, actually, guys, we're going to
It's more
shift
like
it
weak,
over
but
this
yeah.
way. Yeah. Sorry for the last one. We think this one's where we really want to go. But it's
Yeah.
taking in data, it's analyzing, it's readjusting, it's asking ourselves questions like, is this really what we want? Is this really important to us as we're getting into it? And then it's like, nah, not really. Like I like this piece, but I don't like that piece. Let's focus over here on more of this and less of that. And you know, it sounds like you've kind of done the same thing here with like,
Yeah.
I want 100 units. And now it's really like, sounds like for you, it's like, man, if I can cover my burn rate, have some extra cash, be able to still buy some properties,
Mhm.
I'm cool. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Talk about I want to go back real quick and we'll start to wrap here. I want
Sure.
to talk about that 6 unit because I think
Yeah.
that's a really cool thing. Like, so you got this higher ARV with it up
Yeah.
front based off of the income approach of what it was going to do. But now it sounds like you've maybe shifted a little bit with your strategy with it. Talk about
Yeah.
where it's currently at and for better or worse.
So I bought it with the intention of making all of the units short-term and mid-term rentals because that's what we run the numbers off, right? And then when we got into the actual construction process, I'm like, I need to cover my, like 12 months interest only loan. So
Okay.
I'm like, I need a way to cover this for the first 12 months.
Yeah.
So I split it up into two phases.
Okay.
To give you a breakdown of the unit mix, there was a 3 bed, two beds,
Okay.
and then 3 1 bed rooms.
Okay.
So I got lucky, and when I walked in there, the 3 bed had some fire damage in it, and it was already fully remodeled.
Oh, nice.
So I got lucky with that.
Yeah.
Um, so we immediately rented that one out
Okay.
long term,
Long term. Okay.
and then while the 1 beds sat, there was still tenants in there,
Okay.
and I had my management company remodel the two beds,
Okay.
and we didn't fully take them to what they needed to be midterm rentals.
Okay.
Um, in hindsight, I don't remember why I made that decision.
Okay.
Um, but it ended up working out for the best. The three bed, the 2 bed, those were covering my interest only payments
Payments.
for the
Okay.
first like 6 months or however long before we were able to get to the 1 beds.
Okay.
So while those are rented out, where I remodeled the 1 beds and did those, 10 out of 10, super upscale, good fixtures, butcher block countertops and all that stuff.
Nice.
And those 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 are my best performing units. Those
Okay.
1 beds in a 6 bedroom apartment down like in a 6 unit apartment complex.
Yeah.
They brought in 50% of the gross revenue of my 9 other long-term units.
Wow.
So
That's
yeah,
amazing, dude.
that was a good decision. And I was talking to my management company about, because I'm seeing all this cash flow. I'm like,
Right.
I want more of this, right?
Right.
So we talked about, maybe moving the 3 bed and the 2 bed and the 2 bed and like upping the fixtures and turning them um into midterm rentals as well.
Yeah.
But in our conversations, we discovered that, the 2 beds and the 3 beds aren't necessary unless they're like a house.
Right.
They weren't as desirable as the 1 beds were because you're getting like traveling nurses and contractors um and if they're traveling with a family, it's typically only like a couple and they only need like 1 bed typically.
Sure.
So for me to put this extra money all this extra money into these units to get them up where they need to be wasn't necessary. Like the juice wasn't necessarily worth the squeeze
Right.
to do that. So
Right.
it's really cool because I get good cash flow on half of it, and it like diversifies the whole building. So I
For
get good
sure.
cash flow on some of it, and then I get the what's
You
the
get the
word?
stable, the stable.
I get the stability of the
Yeah.
long-term units. So it's the
Yeah.
best of both worlds type thing.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. Like I know for a while when during COVID, this was starting to pick up steam. What you're doing now is like some
Yeah.
people I know started like they have like 16 units and they'd take
Mhm.
like one or two of them and they'd turn it into like a short-term rental or a mid-term rental and
Yeah.
just juice up the NOI and the
Yep.
value of that property by doing that. And it's again, it's a
Yeah.
little risky because you don't know if that's
Yeah.
going to be there forever or whatever. But worst
Yeah.
case, you just turn it into a really nice long-term
Yeah.
unit and hopefully you covered enough to cover your you know, your furniture and the other stuff you had to put in there.
Yeah.
And something I've toyed with myself, but I have never done it. I think what you did right from the jump, having that plan right away,
Mhm.
was a pretty smart thing to do, and think about juicing it. So
Yeah.
so now it's a great asset for you. Is it pretty
Yeah.
stable overall now that like everything's going?
Yeah, surprisingly. So I felt the same thing. Like at the beginning, I was hearing, oh, Airbnb's not gonna be around for much longer. It's yada yada yada. And that
Yeah.
honestly scared me.
Yeah.
It scared, it was a lot of fear in me with that. But I kept moving forward.
Yeah.
But no, that unit has been, even with them being midterms, they've been full. I've had like 98% occupancy.
Holy
Like
moly.
they've been full. I have not
Wow.
had a vacancy for more than like a week or two,
Oh my goodness.
since they started managing it.
Wow. And who is managing it for you? Do you have a third party manager, or do you do the
Yeah,
thing yourself?
I'm not a manager.
Okay.
I'm not gonna do a good enough job. I'm not gonna get good enough rents, and I don't want to deal with the headaches.
Yeah.
But it was actually kind of interesting how I worked out the management thing on that, because
Yeah.
my long-term management company won't do midterm. Right? I
Sure.
guess I haven't talked to them about it, but Tyler and Nicole, they do doorway travel, and
Doorway
so they
travel.
actually manage my midterms on that, and
Okay.
then Main Street manages my long-term rentals
Okay.
on that. So um, they're kind of working together on the same property, and it was kind of this weird thing, like, hey, who's
Okay.
doing the lawn? Are you doing it or am I doing it? And it was like
Yeah.
back
So
and
how did
forth.
you guys figure that out? Like, was it just a conversation that with all three parties involved?
Honestly, yeah, it kind of was, and I was mostly left out of it because the one, I think somebody who know it was, I don't remember if it was Main Street or Doorway that noticed it, but one of them was like, "Hey, we got to figure this out. What's their number?" And so they actually took it upon themselves to
Oh, nice. So
figure
you
it
didn't even
out.
have to be involved in that.
Yeah, and I really appreciated that because it
For
was
sure.
I I'm a guy who's like, I don't want headaches,
Yeah.
and they took the headache away, so
Yeah,
it was
that's
really good.
awesome. One of the reasons I love doing this podcast, I tell every guest this, I feel like, but is I learn something every single time on here. And so, like, as you just said that, I'm like, gosh, I have over 100 units now, and some of these are apartment complexes. And I've always
Yeah.
struggled with that. Like, how do you just take one away from your long term manager and turn it? But it's as easy as getting them in a conversation together.
Yeah.
Dude, I
Picking up
love
the
that.
phone, talk to people like you always say, Corey.
Ah, man. Now I'm like, gosh, how many of the units should I turn into short term, midterm rentals?
Hey man, don't saturate my market.
Yeah, I'll make sure they're in a city away from you. So that's great. I love it, man. Um, just going forward, what does the future look like for you now that you're out on your own and you're doing your own things? All the lessons you've learned over the last couple of
Yeah,
years. What does this next 12 months and 3 months look like for you, or 3 years look like for you?
that's a good question. I've honestly been wrestling with that for probably the last like 6 months. It's I know I want to keep the lifestyle.
Hmm.
But I'm discovering I I really like working with my hands, and I like the construction aspect of everything.
Hmm.
Like I've built every remodel I've done, I've built the kitchen. I
Wow.
love building kitchens for whatever reason, putting the cabinets in, setting the countertops and doing all that.
Yeah.
It's so fulfilling. And so part of me wants to move to like general contractor because I
Yeah.
have my license and everything, and
Okay.
I enjoy doing it. Um, and so I don't know if I want to continue if I want to move into the general contracting space
Sure.
or keep flipping houses for myself. And it's kind of like this. I'm in that weird limbo right now. What I need to do is sit down and fill out an exit strategy. It's what I need to do.
Yeah.
Um, but it's between that but as long as I can, pay my bills and do jujitsu, I'll be happy.
Yeah. 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 Well, the cool thing is you're gaining valuable skills and things that you enjoy doing, right? So it
Yeah,
sounds like you're in a good spot where whichever direction you go, you're going to still enjoy it. So
absolutely,
that's the most important thing, right? If you start
absolutely,
to hate it, then why do it? Life's
exactly.
too short, right?
Mhm.
That's awesome. All right, last question for you, TLP. What's your favorite Wisconsin tradition or place to visit?
Um, Place to visit or Wisconsin? Is it one question or is it?
It's you can answer two. If you have two, I'll take two.
Hmm.
If you just have one, you pick one.
Um, it's a good question. I think favorite Wisconsin tradition, I think, is fish fry.
Oh yeah.
I like a good fish fry.
Oh yeah.
My parents owned a bar growing up, and Dad made the best. He had the best fish fry. It was so good.
Okay.
People come from everywhere for it.
Nice.
Um, yeah.
So you grew up in the Wisconsin tradition.
I grew up in the yeah, let's go get fish fry on Fridays and go to supper club and
Yeah,
old fashions
yeah. Oh
and yeah.
yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. One of my goals of this podcast is to get it out to people outside of Wisconsin and have them invest in Wisconsin, right? Because we have a great
Yeah.
state. It's kind of under the radar for outside investors, California people who have prices through the roof and need a place to park some cash and get some returns. Like I think Wisconsin's great, but a lot of people
Yeah.
don't, they don't know about these Wisconsin traditions, right?
Small
Like
thing. Yeah.
even a Wisconsin old fashioned is completely different than old fashions in 49 other states. So
You ever go out of Wisconsin and try to order an old fashioned?
100%, dude. I got one in Austin, Texas when I first started traveling a little bit. I was very sheltered growing up as far as travel goes. And I got one and I almost just spit it out because I was like, this is like pure gasoline.
This
Oh my
isn't
gosh.
it.
This is not sweet like I'm expecting. What is happening here? This is
Right.
not good. So I learned quickly that Wisconsin has a tradition with their old fashions, and it's not the same in most
Yeah.
other states. So it's always fun bringing people from out of state to Wisconsin and then bringing them to a fish fry and doing an old
Yeah.
fashioned and getting them ingrained in the culture a little bit. So I love it.
Absolutely.
I love it, man. Well, Tristan, this has been awesome, dude. I think there's a lot of nuggets people out there can take from this, whether they're experienced like me, and I just took away a great nugget about maybe diversifying some of my long-term rentals into some midterms, or
Mhm.
somebody out there who's wanting to get started or is already investing and is thinking of going out on their own. I think there's a lot there to glean from what you had to say today, dude. So I appreciate your
Yeah.
time and you hopping on here and providing some value to the audience, dude. Some
Thanks for
aggressive.
having me. This was a fun experience. I
It
loved it.
is. It is fun, man.
I
If
can see
anybody
what you
wants to get in touch with you, do you have a certain place you want to put them? Is it reach out on Facebook, email,
that's a good
phone,
question. I
Instagram?
wasn't prepared for that. I guess I have a business email. It's Tristan at bluefoyerrealestate.com, and that's
Ooh,
BLUEFOYER
foyer.
realestate.com.
Fancy. Very
Yeah.
fancy. I like that. All right. Awesome. And if you're out there and you are one of those folks who's wanting some assistance in getting started here in Wisconsin, or if you are just looking at getting started in real estate, you don't know how to even make that first step into the game, we would love to have a conversation with you and try to help you out. So just go to wisconsindiscountproperties.com, put your information in there, and either myself, Reese, or Connor, or somebody else from our team will reach out to you and have a conversation with you to try to help you get going here in the great Badger State. So thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you on the next episode.